as a 14-year-old, I had a experience which in retrospect I think was kind of metaphysical anxiety. And at the time I experienced it as and actually as a worry about my own sanity. I was having questions that were popping into my mind that I couldn't answer, and they kind of terrified me. And that was to even describe them as questions is not quite right. They were more worries. What's anything going to matter in 100 years? I was at the time, I had broken my leg in a skiing accident, and I was laid up for quite a while. And while I was convalescing, I was reading a book that my dad gave me about the history of baseball, because he and I were both huge baseball fans. And I found the stories very, very engaging, but then always at the end a little bit depressing, because no matter how much glory the athlete in question achieved, at the end of the day there were just some records in a record book. So many career home runs and so many batting titles and so many trips to the World Series. But then what? What was the point of it all? And I kept having this same feeling. And to me at the time, my mother kept saying, well, I mean, it's just a game. No wonder it doesn't seem significant. But I thought, well, but how is that different for anything else? Even if I am a great surgeon and I save lots of lives, even the people whose lives I've saved will eventually die, and I will die, and no one will even remember that I saved those people in 100 or 200 years. And so there was this was the phrase I heard recently that, that eventually every grave goes unvisited. And so there was, I think, this strange craving for lasting meaning or significance that I could find no satisfactory answer for. And as these questions started to haunt me, I then had another question, which was, I wonder if this is what it means to be insane. And when I remember having the day I had that pop into my head, and then I had a surge of panic, like, oh, there's something really wrong with me. And so there was this kind of anxiety that took me over at 14, 15 years old, and I was not able to get out and move around and do things. I was kind of, because of I was in a full-length leg cast, and I was immobilized, and I already had an overly active, slightly neurotic style of thinking, and so it was just so I spent 6 months in this sort of space. I got very, it was kind of a worry or a strange thought about time. And I still, if you stop and think about time too much, it will freak anyone out, because here we are having a conversation. A minute ago I heard some people clapping in the other room. That was an event, but that event has gone. Where did it go? I can't recover that event. It's gone forever. So we have this kind of strange series of sensory experiences that we would describe as one event after another, but they go as fast as they come, and there's nothing that seems stable or about our experience. Everything is always changing, and I had this very strange intuition that there must be something that doesn't change, or else everything that is constantly changing cannot have any lasting meaning or value or significance or something. It was just that kind of. So I was having these sorts of swirling thoughts, and then worrying that there was something wrong with me because I was having them. No one at school that I knew was talking about things like this.
Well, you were obviously just a very, very bright, mature young man.
I was a very immature young person. I had no idea how to process any of this, and my mind was just racing out of control. And so later in my I got out of the leg cast. I went back to school. I have a happy-go-lucky younger brother who, in various ways, sort of pulled me out of my own headspace. And but the underlying questions were sort of still there. And sometime in the ensuing year or so, out of curiosity, maybe some desperation, something I don't quite remember, I picked up the big white fat Catholic family Bible, and it opened to the division between the two testaments, and there was a picture of a very manly depiction of Jesus, not the Jesus with lipstick and and with the verse, "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." And I thought that sounded pretty good to me. And I began to read the Gospel of Matthew at the first chapter, and then the next night at the second, and the next night at the third. And I was kind of blown away by what I was finding, because I had some exposure to Christianity in a nominal sort of way, but what I was finding in the Gospels was so incredibly compelling. But what it did for me was, I found that I couldn't go to sleep at night until I read one chapter. And then I found, as I read more deeply in the Bible, that there were other things in the biblical, what you would call a worldview, that were addressing the questions that I had. And in particular, I remember coming across the verse, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I thought, oh, could there be such a thing? And then in the third chapter of Exodus, where God reveals himself to Moses at the burning bush and says that I am that I am. And the idea of the eternal, self-existent ground of all being is also a personal God, implicit in the name, And so there were things in Christianity that seemed, or in the Bible in particular, that seemed to address the kind of questions and concerns that I had that were, I later learned, philosophical.